Welcome to the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, your guide to motorsports sponsorship. Here's your host, Josh Weesey.
Welcome to this episode of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, which is powered by 4-Wheel Parts. Today, we are talking about what's next. We're talking about the future of motorsports sponsorship. So I broke down a few key elements, things that I think are coming. And I'd love to hear your feedback on this show because there's a lot of things that could be coming. Just because I say it doesn't necessarily mean it's true. And just because I don't say it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. So I'd love to get your feedback. You can shoot me a message, josh@sponsoredriderclubpodcast.com. Now, before we get into the show, there's a few things I want to go over with you. And step one here is talking about 4-Wheel Parts. They got a lot of extended Cyber Monday deals going on. There's something for buy 3 get 1 free tires, which is pretty neat. But there's a lot of other ones that are extensions of the Black Friday Cyber Monday deal. So head over to 4wheelparts.com, check that out. You can always call them to 1-800-284-9840. And they can help you through anything, even if it's just trying to figure out what you might need for your vehicle. They can help figure that out. And I want to encourage something here too, going back to getting feedback about the show. If you could head over to iTunes, also known as Apple Podcasts, and leave a rating and review, that's a great way to provide feedback and help grow the show. If you've been listening to the show for even more than one episode, you're going to know I bring this up all the time. Because it's very important. And right now, I'm sitting at 89 5-star ratings on Apple Podcasts, and I would love to get that number to 100. It was just this milestone. So if you could help me get there, that would be phenomenal. And then subscribing, right? Whatever podcast player you use, there's Podbean, there's Stitcher, there's iHeartRadio, there's Apple Podcasts, Google Play, whatever it is. Go ahead and subscribe. That way you don't miss any upcoming shows. And that also does wonders for the show, which does wonders for the people who make the show possible, like 4-Wheel Parts and these other awesome sponsors. Like AMSOIL, they provide amazing lubrication products, and they're a company that runs on freedom. You can find out more at amsoil.com/rider. SolderWeld, they produce game-changing metal bonding technology, and they're ready to rescue your race. TopThePodium.com, they're experts in motorsports sponsorship and website creation. And then Crash Addict Industries, they provide human protection and extreme racing products. I also want to shout out some of our other partners, MBRP, HMK USA, Sudboy Traction, and High Octane Coffee. Next up here, we've got your High Octane Coffee Marketing Tune-Up featuring Joe Sylvester, and you can find him at Joe Sylvester 8 or at High Octane Coffee. Right after Joe's message, we will get into the show.
What's up, guys? Joe Sylvester here with your High Octane Coffee Marketing Tune-Up of the day. Today, I want to talk about being omnipresent. Omnipresent means being in more than one place. Don't focus on just building your Instagram or just building your YouTube or just building your Facebook or solely relying on just the sponsors or just the stickers on the side of your car and expect that is going to deliver value and return on investment for sponsors. Make yourself present in your local community. Make yourself present at the race car tracks, car shows, even hot rod shows. Offer to bring your race car out, put it on display, shake hands, kiss babies, give out autograph cards. Any kind of charity work with children's hospitals, or maybe more animal hospitals are your thing, animal rescues. Maybe making some appearances at local schools. Little kids love race cars. Use that to your advantage and make a positive impact on your community. Also, trade shows, things like PRI, SEMA, these are all things that are very important for you in building your brand and being, like I said, omnipresent. Make sure that when you're making that phone call or you're sending that email, that sponsor has already met you. That person has already come in contact with you face to face, and you're going to be a step up on the game.
All right, I'm excited to get into the content of the show now. This is something that's been on my mind for a while. I've got a list of topics that, I go back to and cover when the time is right. And I feel like the time is right now to cover the next big things in motorsport sponsorship, at least from my perspective. I basically have broken out 9 different elements here that I feel are going to be big changes that are coming to the world of motorsport sponsorship. And as I kind of outline these things, I keep the caveat there that maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm missing things. But these are from what I've seen and from what I've heard of what's happening. I feel like this is kind of an important time to do this show too. I'm on episode 199 of this podcast. And for some reason it feels like hitting that 200 mark is like a really big milestone. And I'm even asking the same question, like, well, what's next with the show? Like, what other ways can I add value to the show? And I just feel like it's a good time to discuss this. So, for as long as I've held off on having this conversation, like, this just feels like it's the right time. So, long story short, there's 9 different elements here that I'm going to hit. I'm going to go through all of them. I'll hit the first half, take a quick break, thank the sponsor for the show, and then I'll come back into the second half of the conversation. But right off the bat, for me, I think there is a new social media platform emerging. I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but there is going to be a breaking point here, and I think we're close to it, where the Instagram model, which tends to dominate what we do, it tends to have the content and the motorsports people active the most. I think that that's coming to a breaking point. They're making some tweaks. The algorithms are changing. It is harder to get engagement. It is more crowded. The same goes for Facebook. Twitter, I think that went through a change a couple of years back. Even before I started this show, I think that started seeing some challenges with promoting motorsports content. But either way, I think that there's a new social media platform emerging. I think there has to be. I think that the current sites are just too crowded. I think people are getting frustrated, and there's a lot more. I guess there's still a big desire, in my opinion, to create content and get it viewed. Sponsors have a lot of expectations around this too. And I just think that there needs to be another outlet. I think Instagram and Facebook can't contain it all right now. Now, I've been trying to pay attention to up-and-coming platforms, and I'm really trying to see if TikTok is going to be that emerging platform. It's a spot where younger adults are very active on, but from what I understand of it, I don't know if that is going to be the answer, because the content tends to be like very focused on the person doing some sort of activity, whether it's comedy or dancing or something like that. I don't know how this will work yet. I really don't know that much about the app or the creators that are on it. I've never had someone on the show that really even has experience with it. I don't know, but the younger generation is active on that platform right now, which I think gives it a lot of value. From what I can tell, there's some pretty popular creators on there. Like, there's like Howie Mandel. I know he's active on there. There's a couple of other bigger movie stars that are starting to create a presence there. I think like a Miley Cyrus might be trying to create a presence there too. But, some of these videos that people create on there are getting, 15, 20 million views. Now, obviously that's on the extreme side, but the activity is there. The eyeballs are there. So that might be the next thing. But if not, I expect something else will emerge to kind of take the spot and help spread the love. Because just right now, I think Instagram is getting pretty crowded. So that's number one. I do see a new social media platform emerging in the very near future. The second one here is something I know even less about. So TikTok, if that isn't the next platform, like I know very little about that. But this next one, esports, I know little to none about. But I do know that people are making money in esports right now. So esports, if you don't know, it's essentially people playing some sort of video game it's like a sports-based video games, and other people watch him do it, and it's a big deal. It's the graphics and things like that have far surpassed, I think, anybody's original expectations of video games. And there's just a big market out there. Jim Beaver is engaging pretty heavily in the esports community, and if you follow him at all, you would see a Jim Beaver car, a NASCAR, that is part of a racing series that is all electronic. It's all video game based. And for example, this car has like a wrap on it, just like any NASCAR would, but it's digital. It's pure digital. Like, I can change it if I want, right? And obviously with a real race car, you can change it, but there's a cost to it. And in this case, I think that cost is little to none. And you've got a lot of creativity with what you would do with those things. And you got a lot of eyeballs on it too. I mean, this is essentially what sponsors are looking for when, let's say, they, put their logo on your race vehicle. They want the logo present and they want eyeballs on it. And esports offers that. Now, there's a lot of different esports applications. I'm specifically talking about some of these racing style ones, but I could see this taking off. I really can see this turning into a much bigger thing. If we look at, future generations are even more comfortable with, digital gaming and things like that than previous generations. This could be an outlet that I don't even know if you call it motorsports, but, your electronic sports that are motor based. I don't know how to describe it, but I anticipated this is going to get bigger and bigger. If you follow me, you've heard me talk about Gary Vaynerchuk quite a bit. He tends to be kind of a visionary with content creation and things like that. He has talked about, TikTok, and I think it used to be called Musical.ly, but he's talked about that as being the next platform. He is super active on there. But he's also talked a lot about esports and how that is a revenue generation model for, up and coming generations and the current generation. So he's talking about it. A lot of other people are too. That's why I put it on my list, and relatively high. It came to my mind very, very quickly. I want to explore it a little bit more in the future. Maybe I'll do another episode on it. But I do think that this is a big deal and we should be paying attention to it. Okay, the next one here, number 3, women in motorsports. Now, this is an emerging trend that I am pretty passionate about. I put a decent amount of effort in the show into promoting women in motorsports. I think it's a big deal for growing the market in general. Plus, I just think it's a long time coming. We just had 2 big victories here for women in motorsports with the Baja 1000, Sarah Price and Kristen Matlock. Both of them did the Iron Woman race. They've done very well in a lot of races that they're doing, but they drew a lot of very positive attention from their performance in these races. And they are paving the way, among many others, for the next generation of women in motorsports. That it's becoming less of a question of, should women be in racing, or are they interested in racing? I think that they're helping eliminate those questions and just say, I think actually they're getting us to a point where we're not going to say women in motorsports. Like, that would be my goal, is that that's not even a segment that we talk about. It just is natural. It's just like the people in motorsports. And from a motorsport sponsorship standpoint, sponsors are very active right now in engaging women in their sponsorship deals for multiple reasons. But one of them is, if we look at the next generation of girls in motorsports, they're paying attention to these women right now. And that's opening up a whole new market. So think about targeting some people that have never been targeted before in marketing campaigns. It's big. And especially since the population of women is massive, and the current marketing segments that actually contain women is pretty small relatively. So most of what we're marketing to in motorsports tends to be to men, and that means that there's a big gap out there. So there's a lot of room for the market to grow. So I'm excited for that. I love seeing more and more badass women setting positive examples for young girls. And yeah, I think that we are on a very positive path here where, young men are going to be looking up to the women in motorsports in addition to young girls. Like, I don't think that in the future we're going to care about whether it's a man or a woman sitting on a podium. It's going to be, which racer is sitting on the podium. And I'm super excited about that. I think, the growth in like UTV racing has better enabled that, motocross and ATV racing and snowmobile racing, the physical characteristics and the differences between men and women still exist. But some of those things are eliminated when we get into the behind the wheel type racing. So yeah, I'm excited for that. And I think that's going to be a huge trend that we need to, one, pay attention to, and then two, in the future, stop talking about. Like, I don't know how long that is. I don't know if that's 10, 20, 30 years. But at a certain point, I hope that we don't even care. We don't even notice. But right now, I think we need to notice. We need to be talking about it. We need to be promoting it, because that's the only way we're going to get to where we need to be. So that's my number 3 thing. The number 4 thing, which is the last one I'm going to cover before taking a quick break, is this overlanding and adventure style content on the rise. People joke about it like, I used to call overlanding car camping, it wasn't cool. And you're right. Like, it wasn't branded very positively in the past. And recently with, I think, the growth of social media and the need to like get out and explore, it's become more and more popular. I think about this. I spend a lot of time behind a computer. Myself, obviously, I do a podcast. With my day job, I interface with the computer a lot. I'm on social media a lot. Sometimes I'm just like, I just want to get out there. I just want to get out in the world and be out in the middle of nowhere. And yeah, I think that the technological rise is also birthing this like, intense desire to get out there and explore and disconnect. So what that's breeding here is a desire for people to view this type of content, build different types of vehicles so that they're capable of, these pretty cool adventures. And you can capture that. You can capture these moments, and there's an audience that wants to learn about how they can do it, or live vicariously through a content creator. So some people might not ever get to a point where they can take 6 months off for some massive cross-country overlanding adventure, but they might want to watch that on a YouTube channel. They might want to hear about it on a podcast. So I think both of those things are happening. There's people are actually doing more, and then other people are watching and consuming more of that content. Which opens up a vast world for motorsports sponsorship, because you're seeing new companies enter into the scene, and they're looking for content creators to advertise their products through organic integration or straight promotion. So organic integration would be like, hey, I'm going to give you this tent, this rooftop tent. You're going to put it on top of your Jeep, and you're going to use it and talk about how awesome it is, but you're never really going to try to sell it. It's just part of what you do. And the other element is like someone saying, hey, such and such gave me this tent. I'm doing a review on it, and, I'm going to let you know my feedback, right? Kind of the more traditional style of motorsport sponsorship with, this type of content creator platform. So either way, I think that overlanding and the adventure style content is on the rise. I like it a lot myself. Obviously, I've had episodes talking specifically about this and guests specifically talking about this stuff because I do think it's big. I'm personally very interested in it. I'm someone right now that lives vicariously through those folks. I'm used to do this type of stuff in the past and really loved it. And in the future here, I'm hoping that can be something I get more into and can talk more about on this show. So I'm going to take a quick break right now, thank the sponsors for this podcast, and then I'll come back into the remaining points that I want to make about what's next in motorsports sponsorship. let's talk about your truck for a minute. You can count on it to haul your vehicle and your gear to the track or to the trailhead, but I bet you never think about the motor oil. Here's why you should. Your oil is the only thing preventing your engine from wearing out and breaking down. To keep your truck running strong, look for an oil with added wear protection. Like, for example, AMSOIL Signature Series Synthetic Motor Oil. It delivers 75% more engine protection against horsepower loss and wear than is required by the leading industry standard. It provides the next level protection today's demanding engines need to keep running for years and to keep effortlessly towing your ride to the track. Go to AMSOIL.com/rider to find out more. Make the switch to AMSOIL Synthetic Motor Oil today to keep your vehicle running great. 2 questions I get continuously about this show and about sponsorship is, do I need my own website and do I need a resume? The answer is, in my opinion, yes to both, and that's why we partner with TopThePodium.com. Now, if you want to see an example of what a professional website and what a professional resume looks like, you gotta check out TopThePodium.com. They did my website. The Sponsored Rider Club Podcast website is SponsoredRiderClubPodcast.com. That was created by Jeff Vanestall of TopThePodium.com. I think it's awesome. I get a lot of good feedback about it. And there's a number of other websites out there that Jeff has produced that are just phenomenal. So I think it's important in this world of social media where you have control of your content. That's what a website does. It gives you full control. We don't know what Facebook's going to do sometimes. We don't know what Instagram's going to do. We don't know what Twitter's going to do. So if we don't have that central location to direct people and house our content, there is some risk that we incur. So I strongly recommend getting a website, talking to TopThePodium.com. And then the resume, again, is massive. And if you want to stand out, get it done professionally. And honestly, it is one of the best ways to step up your game and present yourself in the best way possible.
Hey guys, George Hamill here to talk about SolderWeld's new off-road repair kit. If you're a racer of any type or an off-road enthusiast like myself, you're going to want to take a close look at this product that bonds metal on the spot. SolderWeld has combined some of their most elite products into one small kit that fits perfectly under your seat or strapped to a roll cage and allows you to make some insane fixes anywhere you go. How many of us have been in a race or out on the trail and got a rock chip in a radiator or brake line? We have seen a top-tier desert race team at the 2019 Min 400 taken out by a simple rock to the radiator. If they had an off-road repair kit on board, they could have been back up and running in just minutes. The kit includes everything you need to work on dirty aluminum, stainless steel, copper, and many other metals. SolderWeld's cutting-edge technology allows you to make these fixes with extremely low heat and incredibly high tensile strength, leaving you a lasting fix every time. Don't be that guy broke down on the side of the trail. Get your off-road repair kit today, and your friends will thank you.
Safety is our overriding priority. I hear it all the time, but I have to ask myself, is it though? Is that the first thing we think of? Is that the first thing you think of? Over the past couple of years, we've seen the performance of production UTVs increase, somewhere around 350%. That means these machines give us a lot more opportunity to have fun and win races, but it also, unfortunately, gives us new opportunities to crash. And that's why we have partnered with Crash Addict Industries. The owner, Travis Pointer, became very accustomed to crashing early in his career. He saw it as inevitable, and he set out to make the process safer. With a passion for racing, welding, and engineering, Crash Addict Industries now produces full cage and other protection systems intentionally designed to protect you during an accident on the track. They also offer a line of human protection products through their vendors. Do this for me at this point. If you're racing with a stock cage right now, please go check out CrashAddict.com and at least just see what they have to offer. Even if you choose to go with a different company, please make safety your overriding priority. All right, welcome back. We have 5 more points to cover here in this show. Again, talking about the next things in motorsport sponsorship. And this one here, number 5, is pretty exciting for me. Electric vehicles. So I've had the opportunity to experience a couple of electric vehicles, not much, but one of them was a Tesla, and it is just a game changer out there. I mean, if you've not had an opportunity to ride in one or drive in one, like, seek that out, because the performance is uncanny, and it's just amazing. So I'm really excited to see where electric vehicles are going to take us, as a society, one for some obvious reasons, but just from a pure performance and excitement standpoint, the instant torque of an electric vehicle is just crazy. So what I see this doing in the motorsport sponsored realm is a couple of things. One is race series, I think, in the future are going to start picking this up more. Now there are, I think, like in electric dirt bikes, there's probably the most activity so far. They're probably the furthest along in the motorsports world for like adopting electric vehicles. But I think that we are going to see more and more applications of electric vehicles, and I think consequently they're going to end up getting their own race series. One, because the performance element is just way different. I mean, the performance that you can get out of an electric vehicle versus an internal combustion vehicle is pretty tremendous. And at a certain point, it might become unfair having an electric race against an internal combustion. I don't know for sure. I think we still got a little bit of technology improvement to get there. But, if you think about having a quick swap battery and, say, a UTV and some of the crazy horsepower and torque ratings you can get out of electric motor, I mean, you could do a short course electric UTV race and do a quick swap battery, and I don't know, there's so many different avenues this could go down where electric is much more competitive in a racing style. I don't know. We've still got a lot of work to do. I don't know how many years it'll take to get there, but we're seeing it emerging now. I think a lot of manufacturers are seeing the potential and starting to take action accordingly. And the motorsport sponsorship world is going to have to respond. I think that there's, I don't know if it opens up too many new markets initially, but it definitely helps sustain current markets. And I think there's some excitement that can come from it. There's also, what it could do is create some, nostalgic or, legacy style race series too. Like, I love the internal combustion engine, and I don't know if I'd ever really want to see it go away. I think it could create, this like a different element of hardcore internal combustion race series in followers, and then hardcore electric vehicle race series and followers, and that might be pretty fun in the future. And it might give motorsport sponsors an opportunity to target different markets like they haven't done before. So either way, I think that's going to be a big deal. The next one is going to be with vehicles here. So I should say vehicle builds. One of the big segments here in motorsports sponsorship is, people sponsoring a Jeep build or a truck build or a car build. Hey, use these parts to make this vehicle awesome. And from an electric vehicle standpoint, there's probably a number of companies that are aftermarket that are saying, how can we position ourselves and start getting a market here? And part of that would be if someone is taking, let's say it's a Tesla, and I think that, in our world and a lot of the off-road stuff, we're going to see some big changes here in the next 1 to 2 years with electric vehicles, trucks starting to become more popular. I could see people saying like, hey, let's, I'll give you a set of my wheels to put on your electric vehicle. And yeah, I think that there's going to be more of that in the electric world, and there's going to create some pretty good excitement around it. It might pull in some of the people who view motorsports as like detrimental to the environment to an extent, because you're now saying, well, it's electric, so at least we're not pumping, CO2 into the atmosphere. Is it CO2 or CO1? I can't remember now. Carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide. I think it's carbon dioxide that we pump in the atmosphere on accident here with the internal combustion engines. All my engineering buddies are like, this guy, come on now. It could open that up by pulling in a little bit different market, saying, yeah, well, now you got a little bit of environmental friendly vehicles out there doing this stuff. So either way, I think electric vehicles are going to bring a lot of new exposure, and I think it's going to be positive exposure and potentially new markets. So I am excited to see where that takes motorsports sponsorship. The next one here, point 6, is more non-endemic companies. So as a reminder, non-endemic means outside of motorsports. Endemic for our purposes would be inside of motorsports. So like endemic would be, a brake manufacturer or a shock manufacturer. Non-endemic would be like, a beverage or a hotel chain, something like that. I think that this is not only something that's going to happen, but I think it's a necessity to happen. The size of motorsports is small enough that in order for it to grow and become more mainstream, we're going to need help from non-endemic companies. We need them to pump some money into it to keep things moving, keep things growing. Think about if Red Bull and Monster never entered into the motorsports world. Like, how different would it be? Would we still be able to maintain some of the race series that we have now in motorsports? I don't know. I think the answer is no. I think that was a requirement that they entered into the industry. So I think that's going to become more and more of a necessity. And if we look at some of the previous comments that I made, I think that there are going to be drivers for this. So specifically growth of women in motorsports, growth of electric vehicles, and overlanding. Those are some of the bigger ticket items that are going to draw in more non-endemic sponsors. Now, the last one, I didn't really create this as its own segment, but it is important to note that UTV growth is it's basically on the radar as probably one of the biggest growth items within off-road and motorsports right now. So I think people are aware of that, and I think that that's going to help bring in more non-endemic companies because of the fact that UTVs are something that I think the mainstream are a little bit more comfortable getting into. I think it's a little bit less intimidating for someone who's not driven, an off-road style vehicle before to get into one of these things. They've got seat belts from the factory. They've got steering wheels versus handlebars. They've got roll cages from the factory. A lot of them have doors now from the factory. You don't really need a special skill set to just hop in a UTV and ride it. Now, to be successful and safe, you need a skill set, but it's different from if you would hop on a dirt bike or an ATV. In most cases, you don't have to use a clutch to drive it. So basically, the barrier to entry with a UTV is lower, and that's why I think we're seeing the growth. And as a result, I think that we're going to continue to see non-endemic companies look into this sport and say, how can we get involved with this growth? So that to me is exciting. So all those elements, I think, one, are going to drive more non-endemic companies to look into it, but two, I think that it's just a necessity. I think that this is a natural evolution, and I think it's a requirement for us to continue doing what we're doing. My next point here, number 7, is I think we're going to continue to see a rise in audio and video streaming. I guess you could probably classify this too as podcast. I think we're seeing a lot more motorsports podcasts come on. Now, we're seeing some fall off too, but we're seeing more and more come on. That's one of the more popular questions that I actually get now, and I do plan on doing an episode in the future about, how to start a podcast. There's tons of existing content around this, but for this audience, I can definitely help folks with that, starting a podcast. I've done it before, and I'll continue to do it because I think this is part of our growth. But what I want to kind of talk about in this segment, though, beyond the podcast piece, is that, increasing technology around live streaming and phone technology is giving us more opportunity for doing live streaming and content creation in more remote places, or places where they don't have TV coverage. So think about some of these races that right now don't have, network TV coverage. Video streaming is allowing those things to now go out to an audience. So let's say a Facebook Live, for example, you can create a Facebook Live stream as long as you've got the service to do it. And I think across the world, we're continuing to see more towers come up and better cell phone coverage, things like that. As those things improve, you're going to gain access to some of these race series that are typically smaller. You're going to be able to watch those things, and you're going to be able to broadcast them to a larger audience. And I think we're seeing that now quite a bit with like the Mint 400 UTV style, off-road race style stuff, where in the past out in the desert you might not have really seen as much video coverage of that, or if you did, it was something that was later down the road after editing and things like that, so they can compile footage from around different areas. But now you can watch some of these things via Facebook Live or other streaming applications in real time. So it's nothing out of the ordinary. It's not like some new concept of being able to watch something live like this, but we're just being able to get into more remote locations, and that's going to continue to rise, which is exciting. And from the rider racer standpoint, you now have new metrics to leverage. Oh, well, this Facebook live stream of this race that was out in the middle of nowhere, received, X number of views, and I was featured in that X number of times. So I think that's pretty exciting. It's pretty obvious that it's happening, but the scale of which it's happening, I think, is going to start blowing up here in the next couple of years. Okay, point 8. And this one is going to kind of lead into point 9, which will be my last one, but rising expectations. So if I look at the previous 7 points that I made, they're pretty positive. Like all these cool things that are coming to motorsport sponsorship that are really going to be game changers. That's all great stuff, but it comes with some downsides, in my opinion. And that's rising expectations. Now, I will say I am a big fan of high expectations. I have high expectations for myself, people that I work with, and I think that's good. I think it helps bring us all up. It helps us perform better. It helps us deliver more to the world and make the world a better place. But it comes at a cost, because there is a certain point where people become overwhelmed. And in our society, I think that that's becoming more prevalent, and I think the risks are higher. I think the expectations are beyond what we're able to achieve. And I do think that more growth in this industry is going to just continue to rise those expectations, and we're going to have to be cautious of those. So what I mean by that is I do think that there's going to be more contractual obligations and contracts that come out of motorsport sponsorship. I think the handshake deals that happen now and that have been very strong in the past they're going to dwindle. I think people are going to become more comfortable navigating contracts and putting them together. And I don't have anything against contracts. I think that it helps create clear expectations, but it is another skill set that people need to learn and navigate comfortably. And it's going to take some time to do that. And it's going to keep some people from staying in the game. They might not want to deal with that. Now, I do think there will always be handshake deals, and I love handshake deals too. I do think that's always going to be there to an extent, but I think it's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. I think these smaller brand ambassador deals, even, product sponsorships are going to come along linked with some sort of contracts. More and more. Not that happens now, but I think it's going to continue to happen and grow. The next one, the social media expectations are on the rise. And if you remember some of my previous points in the show, these platforms are getting crowded, and it's harder and harder to meet those expectations. So if you create a YouTube channel today versus 5 years ago, the growth rate is much more difficult to achieve. So a lot of marketers out there still have expectations of a growth path that you'd see from a podcast or an Instagram profile or a YouTube channel from 5 years ago, and it's just not the case anymore. In one element, this is, I think, causing marketers to reach out more to different influencers. I think that, they can't rely as much on one or two big influencers because the risk is very high of their platform being shut down by an algorithm. So I think that gives the opportunities for a lot more like smaller sponsorships spread across a lot more people, which is kind of cool. But it's still high expectations. The algorithms are very demanding, and if you're not posting very, very actively, there's a chance that your content is going to, get kicked to the side. So that's just, it's more expectations. The content quality expectations are going up. Now, luckily, the technology rates are rising as well. So it's easier to create better content. Like every day it gets easier. But it also means that people are continuing to have to learn new technologies. They're having to take on new skills. They're having to put, more focus into what their content's going to be. So I do think that it's a rising expectation that we have to be conscious of. And then the last one here is return on investment. Inflation causes this, increase in technology causes this, but costs are on the rise. UTV today versus 10 years ago is a great example. The technology is maybe 1,000,000 times better. I don't know, but it's way better. But the cost has gone up too. It's harder now to purchase a UTV than it was 10 years ago when they were really starting to come out and get popular. I think the possibilities are much larger now too, but the cost did go up, right? And I think that's across the board. I mean, there's very few things where the costs go down. But yeah, I think that is driving companies too to have higher expectations on what their return on investment really is and how they track that and how they justify it. And that's probably the hardest part about what we do is justifying the return on investment. So yeah, all these things, rising expectations, I think it's very real. It's not all bad. Like I said before, expectations can be a good thing. But the main concern that I have with 0.8 rising expectations is 0.9. So I've done a show on this recently, and I'm just going to hit it here. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. Burnout. So that's really the last point I want to make in this is that there is a risk for more and more people to get burned out on motorsports sponsorship because of these rising expectations. It can get exhausting to build a portfolio of sponsors and meet all their expectations. It can get exhausting to manage all your social media, all your content, contracts, changes in technology, changes in race series expectations. People can get burned out, and they might do one or two things. One could be they just stop. They'll try to self-fund, right? Which there's nothing wrong with that. I think that I've actually done a show on this before. You have to make a decision. Are you going to self-fund or are you going to go after the sponsorship? I don't have an issue with either one. Self-funding is not possible for everybody, but if you can get to that point and you want to remove some of these expectations and rely on yourself for those things, you can do that. That's an option. But that's one way people might opt out of motorsport sponsorship. The other way is they just stop racing, or they stop creating content, or they stop doing that stuff because they just don't want to deal with the extra stress, or they've just reached a breaking point. you can't blame anybody for that. I think that our society just has a lot of expectations, and you can get burned out in many ways. Even if motorsport sponsorship alone isn't the reason for the burnout, it might just be that one extra element that people can't get past. So it could lead to, like I said, one of two things. One is people opting out, or two is people finding new ways of streamlining how they do what they do. So, for example, if we go back to social media, there's apps now that are coming out and getting better where you can post to multiple platforms and you can schedule ahead of time to make that easier. There's virtual assistant programs where you can hire somebody to do those posts for you, right? You can outsource your social media, and that's definitely an option. You can outsource a lot of your content creation, right? You can outsource someone doing your video editing, or if you get into a podcast, like, you can outsource that editing. You can outsource people taking your photographs at races. That all these things can help minimize the effects or the stress that comes along with these rising expectations. But to an extent, all these have costs associated with them too. So there's the trade-off there that people are going to have to navigate. But it is it's something I see that's coming in the horizon. I feel like we're going to run into more people who are burned out in the whole process. But we'll see. Maybe that will be offset by tremendous growth, and it won't have an impact on the overall motorsport sponsorship world, but it will have impact on individuals. I guarantee that there will be individuals that just get burned out and just opt out. And, I don't want to lose anybody in this business, but it's going to happen because of these rising expectations. All right. Well, that is the content that I wanted to cover today. I appreciate you sticking with me through this. If you do have questions or feedback, you can shoot me an email, josh@sponsoredriderclubpodcast.com. But now I'm going to close out this episode and leave you with this. Have fun and ride safe. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, which is powered by 4Wheel Parts. Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any of our upcoming shows. You can do this on pretty much any podcast player out there. And then follow us on social media. Pay specific attention, though, to our Facebook and Instagram pages, which is where we go live. You can catch the audio content on the podcast, but in order to interact and get immediate feedback, you got to be watching live, and we do that 2 times per month. Check out the Sponsored Rider Club on Facebook as well. It is a group where you can ask questions about motorsport sponsorship and get feedback from the community. A special thanks goes out to our sponsors, 4Wheel Parts, AMSOIL, SolderWeld, TopThePodium.com, Crash Addict Industries, and our other partners, MBRP, HMK USA, Studboy Traction, and High Octane Coffee. I look forward to serving you again next week. Until then, have fun and ride safe.